Hey guys, good evening and welcome back. Now, earlier on we were working on switching off supplies and we had a bit of an issue at this point here. Now, the output spliner is basically not being, well, the output spliner was not set, and that makes sense because if we look at the refiner, it's got an input and an output, and if we're only recording the output spline, then obviously the input spline is being ignored, and in this case the input spline is what we actually require. Okay, so what we actually need to do here is get this conveyor in. We need to refresh the nodes on this. This is a legacy of yesterday when things went wrong and I decided to replace the spline with an older version of it. Not that much older, but all the same it caused us an issue. Okay, so having looked at this, it appears that we have no conveyor in. It's never being set on the refiner. Okay, if we look for references, it's just not there. Right? And we're not setting it anywhere. Okay? So, our answer to this problem has to be that when we click to finish or end the spline, we set this conveyor in to the current spline. Okay, now the current spline can change. The current spline is on the controller, right? But what we want to do here is set this current spline. And there we go. Okay. And that should solve our problem. Now, if we go back to our code for here, we shouldn't do this. We should get our conveyor in, and then we should get the supply actor. Okay. And then I believe we can actually do a stop supply message. Directly to it. Okay. So we should be able to dive in here, straighten these up a bit, and then that should be actually calling to itself. Actually, no, it's not. It's calling to the supply actor, which is fine. That's what we want. So this should actually call to the miner. Okay? We'll put our breakpoint back in here, right? Then we shall go to our miner. Then we have our event stop supply. So we can add a breakpoint there and see if it comes in here. Okay, so from there, we'll hit continue. We'll do our usual stuff. And we shall see how this goes. Let me just grab a drink while we are waiting for the miner to get built. Okay. So we can spin this building around. It's not quite ready yet, but soon will be. Get that. Okay. So now we can see if we go to the refiner, we can go to the input and there it said stop supply. So now we can see that it's hit it in miner. So that's excellent news. Okay. And now in our miner, in fact, right, let's just actually, you know what, let's just see what happens, right? Well, actually nothing's going to happen. Right, okay, so basically what we should do is say in here, we should say allowed, set allowed to process to false. Okay, so go with this again. So this time what we'll do is we'll save it after we've built these two. And we'll take it from there. Right, we can turn this round. Right, and then we'll save it. Then we'll go to our conveyor. I think I'm going to help this with a box or something. Collision box. So we've got our conveyors in. It's coming up nicely. How are you guys out there tonight? How are you doing? Now this should now send out a signal soon to say stop it. There we go. Resume that. It says stop it. And this is more like we need to do right, so we'll disable that. This isn't ideal, but it's kinda good. It doesn't seem to want to stop for whatever reason. Allowed to process is true. How is that getting set? We're in the miner. Right. We are setting this to false. And yet, so it's false. Okay. Presume that it's true. Eh? What on earth? Explain this to me one more time here. How is that getting set? How is that getting set back to true? I don't understand. Let's check everything. Right, so allowed to process getting set there. We're not resetting it anywhere. set process just gives us the time in which to do the processing. Right, none of these are doing anything. So how on earth is this allowed to process being set? Wait a minute. Then we'll set it. Right, so that looks exactly the same. Right, and this is exactly the same, so I don't see how this is going to change anything. Right, we'll disable that just now. Well, this is all rather weird. So if we continue that, apparently we didn't save it. I'm pretty sure I did. But let's not worry about that for now. Okay. Right. So in theory we've saved that. Okay. Barrel's on the way. Which obviously means that this is set to allowed to process. In fact, what we should have done was go to the refiner. Okay, so that's now been set. So what we need to do is enable that breakpoint and resume. Now this should be false, but it's true. How can that be true when I've just set it to false? Right, let's disable that breakpoint. And let's disable this breakpoint. Now, we'll resume that, right? And we'll hit save a couple of times, right? and we shall stop it for now. And then in the base building, right, we want to check where this is being, well, first of all, we want to make this visible, okay? And then we want to find the references for it. And then we want to find the references for it everywhere. Now, it's in the output comp output. Right? So, that kind of tells us something. Right? In the minor, right, we've got the set. But the issue here is the comp output is resetting this back to true. Okay? So we're going to have to check it in here. Now it sets it there as false, but it sets it back here to true. Now we can't do that, and I always knew that would be an issue, right? If this is allowed to be true, right? Okay, so we'll work this out gradually. We'll press play and continue. Then we'll draw our conveyors in. Okay. And the thing I'm wondering about is if you can use rep notify in a single player game. Because if we could use rep notify, then we could do it, and there you go, it stopped it. It stopped the supply because basically the refinery is full, right? So I'm just wondering if there's a way of knowing if a value's changed, right? Now the only way I know how to do it is in rep notify, but that's on a network game. Yeah, what they're saying is that you can do it. Right, the only downside seems to be that it uses 4 bytes of RAM per object. Which isn't a lot, really. But we have got a separate answer, which sounds like a better idea. We need a function to check all of the different things to say whether we process, whether we stop processing, whether we output, or what kind of mode we're in, right? And if we switch supply, when are we allowed to switch supply? Right? So, from that, I need to work out a way of doing this. What we can't do is, right, let me explain the situation, right? The refiner can't tell, it can send a message to say stop the supply, okay? That's fine. But that doesn't mean that we stop supply. It means that we stop putting stuff on the conveyor belt, right? It doesn't mean that we stop processing. Okay? So, in actual fact, the stop supply should be on our component output, right? So if we look in here, right, we can see that, let's have a look. This is the component, this is the process, okay? So all that the process does is put stuff into the output, okay? So actually, we don't do allowed to process, or sorry, we do say allowed, we do want allowed to process, but it's not going to be controlled by the interface, right? The interface is actually going to control the output component, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the component output, right? And we're going to add so recipient doesn't, recipient is full. Right? So basically you can have a case where we want to process, right? So let's say our output supply storage limit is 10, right? But there's only 5. Now, in that case, we still want to process to get it back up to 10. But if the recipient has said, I don't want any of this product, then the output component has got to say, okay, you don't want the component. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop outputting. Okay? So, in our component, in this component here, it's this part is wrong. Okay? We basically don't do that. We don't do that. What we do is we say this. And we do a not on that so that it keeps our branches nice and straight. We could do this and do an and on this as well. Right, but fundamentally this is what we want. So, in the case of the minor, we don't set this. We're always allowed to process, okay? Or sorry, we're not always allowed to process, but we just don't output. Okay? We don't output the goods into the component, into the output component, okay? But what we want to do here is we want to get our comp output and then we want to say recipient is full. Okay. And I think that's what we want. And I don't think we want this. I mean, that's always processing, right? So it's always putting stuff out. So what we could do is another check on this. We could just check the input component, or sorry, check the output component of this to check that it's not full. So what we could do in here is we could say component output, then say is full, and then we basically do a not. And then for our miner, we should have another boolean called out of minerals. Okay. And we should set it here to true. Then we should put that in there. And we should put that in there. And then that should be the first check we do. And that should be a not as well. I mean, we could change it. And we can say has minerals, right? And we can default it to true. Okay, so this means it's always going to try and process. The first thing it's going to check is to see if there's actually any minerals there, right? Because if there's no minerals, it can basically do nothing. So it's just going to bypass everything. Now, did I set that to true? Yeah, I did. Right, but in here, we'll set it to false. Okay. So that's okay. So there is a distinct difference between allowing it to process and allowing it to output. Okay. Those are very different things. Okay. So, if we look back at our component output, we are doing our output from storage, and if the recipient is full, which we're setting in our interface call, then we're basically not going to do this part. Which is fine. Okay. So, I mean, it should look like the same result as before, but it is technically slightly different. And now we're not outputting at all, which is awesome. So we'll add a breakpoint. Right, so our miner is not doing anything. Add breakpoint. Has minerals, true. Step over that. That's false. So then that's true. Step over that. Step over that. So this is making the product, right? And it's putting it in the output of the comp output. right? So there's definitely stuff in the miner. So the problem must be, right, okay, wait a minute. Right. So we'll just keep looking at this, right? And we'll say that the problem, the miner has, its comp output has output, right? So we can see it there, it's got output, bauxite 55. Okay, now that should have stopped processing because I think our output is only 10, right? But we'll worry about that one in a minute. That's because of the processing thing that I've just changed. Okay, so basically in our comp output, is that because I've saved it? And this now is full. Let's have a look at our refiner. And we need to look at our comp input. No, that says 0, so that is not full. Right, so it's doing that. We have a refiner, but we don't have an output spliner. Oh, of course we don't. Yeah, but that's for the refiner. Right, so resume. This is for the miner, okay? This is the one that should be working. So that's got a miner, that's got a spliner. We can step over that. And spline complete. Is the spline complete? Yep. The output full is true. Output is full. Right. This is wrong. We shouldn't stop it because the output is full. Okay, so that's bad. If the output's full, we should tell it to stop processing. Okay, so if this is the one that where we should say allowed right, we should say allowed this isn't comp output, right? So we want owner get owner building and we should say allowed set allowed to process should be set to false. Okay, I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of work on this because there's going to have to be times where we do or we don't do this. Right? So yeah. No, that may actually be okay. Right. So if we continue this, right, we don't want to do that. Right, so we need our conveyor belt. We go to here. Okay. So resume that. Yep, that's what we want. And that's what we want. Resume. So the thing is here, right, that comp output, if it's full, tells its own building to stop processing. If the input is full, then it tells the previous building, the supplier, to stop sending it. And then we're back to telling the comp output to stop. Right, so this looks like it's not working again. So it should be the refiner. So we need to find the refiner. And then we need to find the input. And there's the input there. And it's gradually going up. Right? So we've not done anything with the comp input by the looks of things, right? Which would suggest that we're not doing this kind of right. So if we look at this, yeah, comp input isn't doing anything. So, right, I'm going to have a break for 5 minutes, grab a cigarette, have a think about this. Stick around, guys, I won't be very long at all. I shall be back shortly. Okay guys, we're back and let's take a quick sip of a refreshment. Okay. Now let me just check something here. Right, we are all set up again. It's just it shows with a bit of a delay. Right, so in the process of the refiner, right, we check supply for inputs, and we don't do this. What we do is we get our input component and we say is full. Okay, it's not that. What is it? It's is input full. Right? So hang on a minute. If the input okay, so basically in our refiner we should be saying somewhere if the input is full, we basically stop it, right? So that should be in our process. So we should say input full is input full, right? And this is the part that should do the event. Right? This should do the event stop supply. So the question is, where did I send this? Here it is. Here it's here. Right, so that's okay. That's on event transfer item. Okay, so that should tell our miner to stop. Okay. Now let's see if it's actually doing that. So it's sending our stuff. Our input should be going up. Right, so here we go. So now it's told, it's going to tell our miner to stop. Right? But it's not. So if we go into our miner, recipient is full. That should be true. God damn it. I'm getting these the wrong way around and then forgetting, doing it so it's all nice and tidy and then forgetting you did it, and then that causes problems and you kind of scratch your head, which is exactly what I just did for actual real there when I was wondering what was going on. Right. So that's told it to stop. Right. We can disable that. And there it's stopped. Okay. So that's good, but we don't actually need to use this interface because we've got the supply actor, right? Well, yeah, we can do that. Right. So what we can do is change this and give it an input. we can say recipient full. Okay. And now if we go back to our refiner, well, it's actually not recipient. It's input. So we can say input full. Save that. We can go back to our refiner. Refresh node. Apparently it doesn't like you changing the name. Delete that. Compile that. Right, if we go back here, got nothing, so we'll go back to here and add our input full, compile that, then go back to our refiner and we basically say true. And we do that. You see here, and do false. Okay, and if we go back to here, if we go back to the miner, we get this input full back, and we basically plug it in here. And that should be us. Yep, we like that. That should work perfectly for us. How's everybody out there tonight in the wide world? Everybody good? So that's good. That should work. And similarly, it should work for our smelter and our fabricator. But what we're going to do is we're going to have to copy this, right? And then we're going to have to go to our refiner and we're going to paste it. We delete that, put that in there, and put that in there. Okay. So we'll save that for now. Then we're going to have to go to our buildings and then go to our smelter and basically put the same thing in there. I think what I'll do is we build up sort of interface calls. I'll add them to a separate graph, and we'll just have like an interface graph that does all the interfaces so that we know where all the interfaces are. Like for this one and all the rest of it. That one and, you know, event transfer item. And then that'll tidy things up a bit. So our final one is going to be, well, warehouse is going to be a special case, I think. But it's certainly going to be in the fabricator. Right, so we'll add it in here. Okay. And we'll keep working on this. That's okay. Yeah, I think, actually, you know what? We could split these into three, right? We could have interactions, right? We could have interfaces, interface stuff, and then we could have normal processing stuff. So like anything that's an interaction with like a hover over, a clicked, or something like that, we could split those up into a different event graph. So that each event graph is kind of split down a bit, you know, so you've got on clicked, that's begin play, so you leave that one alone, right? You've got on hovered or clicked, you've got the processing stuff, then you've got an interface, then you've got an overlap, which isn't plugged into anything, then you've got another interface, then you've got all the hover cursor over stuff, which is basically just setting you know, it's just changing the emissives on the materials. You know, there's not really too much of a reason for that to have clogging up space. Although having said that, we could move that over here or something like that. And then do like a nice big, I suppose I could split it up in that way. We could do 3 colours, red, orange and green or something. Like red is what do you call it? Red is like interaction with buttons and whatever. Then orange is interface stuff. And then the red is the actual events, right? That's just my thoughts on the matter. You can think about that one yourselves. The interesting part is going to be when we do the splitter and the combiner, how we work out what's what. So that'll be an interesting one. But yeah. So now in the processing, we need to add, well, maybe not even, yeah. If we look at the if we look at our miner, we're going to have to have the same constraints. Like we're going to have to have this. Right, so let's copy that. And let's put it on the refiner. Everything else should stay the same, except for this part. This will need to get copied in as well to the next one. So this can go away. I think we'll leave that there for now, right? But I think we're not using that anymore. So this can go in here. Then we can save that. Then we can go to our smelter. Right? And we can do the exact same thing here. Right, we can save that, and then if we go back to our refiner, our bit at the end, this part here, right, we're going to delete this out the way. Then we're going to copy all this. I'm going to copy that, and this goes in the event transfer item. So we save that, and we go back to our smelter. And on the end of here, we put this. We can delete that because that's not used. We can save that. As I kind of said, our issue is going to be when we come to the spliners and stuff. Right, so finally what we can do is we can go to our fabricator and do basically the same thing. Paste that in, do that, bring it up, save it, go back to our refiner, copy this, go back to our fabricator, then go back to our process, and paste it here. And this goes in here. We can save that. Okay. So that should see us in good form. Fabricator's obviously a bit different, but we'll delete that. Now, the interesting thing here is going to be that everything is going to gradually stop. That's the theory behind this, right? So let's give it a try and see what happens, shall we? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a smelter. Then we're going to build a fabricator. Okay. Then we're going to spin that around. Then we're going to spin that around. Right, and then we're going to pick iron sheet. Then we're going to pick widgets. Then we're going to start joining these up. And yeah, not so good. I don't know what's going on there. That one worked. But for some reason, our refiner didn't want to work. Well, that's interesting. Well, not really. It's just a pain in the ass. Right, now why is this not working from the spliner? From the refinery? Wow. That's weird. Right. Okay. We're going to do a new game. We're going to do it from the start, right? So the best way to work this out, if it's working or not, is to do that. Then to do the smelter. Then to do the fabricator. Okay. I'm wondering if this was because of the saved game. It was causing it to freak out. Nope, doesn't appear to be. It's something to do with this refinery. There's something weird going on with the refinery. Now, I think I know what it is. Now we do start or maybe it's on the end. Okay. So that would suggest it's on the smelter. Use endpoint. Simple as that, guys. Simple as that. So this is going to be empty. Interestingly, I don't think we're saving our resources, right? Because if the I didn't save the game anyway. That's why. Right. So here goes. Now what I'm going to do, right, is well, we're going to set these, right? Iron sheet, close that. Oh, that's interesting. Have to do something about that. Close that. Right. So what we need is probes. Okay. And what we're going to do is basically this should fill up, this should fill up and stop and then kind of start again as this starts making stuff. Right, so this should like start and stop as we use the input. So I'm going to watch this first. In fact, I'm going to save it first, right? Right, so here comes our stuff. And let's see what the behavior is here. Okay. Now this one's stopped. Right, but it's not going to start again until it gets down to like having used some of its stuff. Right, so the refiner isn't doing it. which is kind of awesome, you know. Here's our refiner, right? And our comp input is not used yet, actually. Right, but it's not switched our miner back on. Okay. So we're going to have to stop it for now. The smelter is not saying stop supply. Oh, these are both full. Input not full. And the smelter. Okay, we'll check. Okay. We'll check that in a minute. Okay. But the interesting thing here is this is event transfer item. Now this isn't going to happen. This is probably in the wrong place. So I'm going to shut down the stream and have a think about this. For anybody watching, hope you've enjoyed it. Check out the description, subscribe. In the description you'll find Discord, Patreon and my previous Steam game. So I bid you all a fine evening for the rest of your evening, and I shall see you tomorrow at 2 PM Central. Bye bye for now.